David, how you doing today?
Fine. Is this Dustin?
This is Dustin. It's great to be speaking with you.
You too, sir. Man, where are you and what city? What's the name of that city up there?
We're in Mankato, Minnesota.
Where is that?
It's about an hour south of the Twin Cities. So,
Well, you've been. I'm sure if you're old enough, you went to the St. Paul Auditorium Arena there to see wrestling in the old days.
Sure. Yeah, this is AWA country for sure.
You got that right.
Well, David, I'm excited to talk to you about WOW Women of Wrestling coming to Access TV on January 18th. Can you tell the listeners a bit about what we're in for?
Well, January 18th is going to mark a special day at 9 o'clock Eastern, and I think in Minnesota that's probably 8 o'clock Central Time. Women's Wrestling, 1 hour dedicated show, the only all-female wrestling show in the world, is going to debut on Access TV that evening. And it's going to be a showcase of the best women's wrestling anyone's ever seen. Dedicated 1 hour. Jeannie Buss of the Los Angeles Lakers has put this together with Mark Cuban, who's airing it on his network, Access TV. And they've got a special evening planned for everyone. I'm just fortunate enough to be a part of it. And as many listeners out there have heard the names The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, etc., those names were evolved into whom they are today, the icons of wrestling. Really, in my mind, unless you can tell me one, Dustin, Andre the Giant comes to mind when he stepped over the third rope, and he's a phenom. The second you looked at him, your jaw dropped and you said, Andre the Giant. You just looked up in awe. That's going to happen again on January 18th. When fans tune in on Access TV, they're going to see a phenom of professional wrestling again. The name is The Beast. And she is a phenom, and she will make her mark that night on WOW Women of Wrestling on Access TV. So I urge the fans to watch. Anyone that is listening and says, I'm not really interested in professional wrestling, possibly. Maybe they've watched Glow. Maybe they're a fan that has watched the Netflix Glow series. Maybe they're a fan that's casually watched it in the last 4 or 5 years. They should tune it on. If they can't, put the VCR on, because wrestling is going to change that night. Professional wrestling is going to showcase women's wrestling like never before, and that's what they're going to see. Another super talent that's on that event is Tessa Blanchard, and all fans know Magnum TA, her father, stepdad, and her dad, Tully Blanchard. She comes from a wealth of knowledge of wrestling. Her skill set is almost matched by none other. And she steps into the WOW ring that night. The fans will see our champion, Santana Garrett, and they're going to see a girl named Fire. What a wrestler, Fire. And let's not forget any fans that are fans of Glow that loved all the big spectacular characters and fun of it will enjoy this program also. So there's something for everyone. I urge them to watch that night. The main event will feature the original WOW wrestler who's never been pinned to the mat, Jungle Girl. She is in the main event that night. And anyone that's watched WOW before it was taken out of syndication after the 9/11 event that just killed the ad market will remember her and be astonished at her athleticism and prowess in the ring. So that's really what's happening Friday night on the 19th. I think it's a big night, Dustin.
Yeah, that is awesome. And of course, David, with your passion for wrestling and Mark Cuban, Access TV, I mean, this is a great opportunity for you, and it's really awesome for the fans.
You hit on the key word, Dustin, passion. WOW could have gone on TV anywhere, but we took 2.5, 3 years to build out its social platforms, meet with wrestling fans across the country, find out what they wanted in an alternative wrestling program. There's so much wrestling product out there now, including digital. I think it's the most there's ever been in the history of wrestling. And we didn't want to come out with just another wrestling event and or program. And so we met with the fans, we talked to them, and we realized what their passion was, what they wanted to see in the ring, the fun they wanted back in wrestling. And WOW's going to deliver it that Friday night on Access TV on the 19th of January.
Well, David, you mentioned so much women's wrestling available now, and you are really right there in the forefront. And I wanted to ask you what it was that made you want to, champion the cause for women's wrestling. I mean, you've been doing it a long time.
Well, I was fortunate enough to work for Dick the Bruiser when I was a kid. I was fortunate enough to see women's wrestling. I was fortunate enough to see the perils that it faced. And I was fortunate enough to be an announcer for his company when we debuted a big match with Princess Jasmine and a wrestler by the name of Candy Devine. And being the announcer, I was able to spice up the event for the live audience, and at the end ask them would they ever like to see women's professional wrestling as a main event. And the crowd went wild. And that spark, along with people telling me, no one's ever going to watch women's wrestling, no one wants to see it, it's a popcorn match. That's all I need to hear is no to say I'm going to do something. That gave me the drive, if you will, to follow a vision and a passion, and it's going to culminate that Friday night on 9 o'clock on Access. That really is my vision. You look back at Glow, the wrestling wasn't that great. It wasn't that athletic. What was going on back then? The most athletic thing on television or even in pop culture for women at that time was a Jane Fonda video. And you look at today's female athletes across the board outside of gymnastics, which has always been the leader and threshold of women's athletic competition. It's today beyond anything we've seen because every woman today is the beneficiary of Title IX. And people that are in their 20s and early 30s today, they've grown up the beneficiary of Title IX. They've had athletics since day one, from grade school to high school to college. And subsequently, that's why you see the athletic prowess of female athletes that step into that ring at a pinnacle, if you will, of skill.
Well, yeah, it's as you mentioned, women's wrestling, really in the forefront now with WWE and of course UFC having women compete, but Glow and WOW and a lot of the work that you've done, decades ahead of the curve. So it's great that it's finally kind of caught up with the men's side of things.
Well, we appreciate it, and there's no doubt WWE's switching their pendulum to more athletic competitions. There's no doubt Ronda Rousey put a big punch and stamp on women athletics when she competed in UFC. No doubt that the Netflix series with Glow showcased enough awareness of what women go through and what they do to participate in this sport of professional wrestling to open up a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people's conscience to what they bring to the table in terms of athleticism, sportsmanship, fun, performance, and theatrical staging to enjoy yourself watching it on television and live when it comes to your venue.
Again, David McLane with us, and WOW Women of Wrestling coming to Access TV on January 18th. And, David, you mentioned the Netflix series for Glow, and, I know that was really popular. What did you think of that? Did you think it was kind of portrayed, I don't know if a positive light or maybe kind of factually to what actually happened?
I'm amazed how the three writers really nailed it. And I'm not talking about the fun stuff of Bash, the announcer, coming in on a helicopter, or the little robot that was dispensing of pills and cocaine. That never happened. My vice was maybe a six-pack of Heineken, and the director's vice was a cigar and a nice blackjack table. So we didn't have any of that over-the-top behavior going on. But what they nailed perfectly was the sisterhood of those wrestlers that stepped into the ring and participated in Glow. And that passion that they felt, not being professional wrestlers, but feeling that and gaining that passion once they were inside that squared circle. I think if you even speak to the actors that participated in that show, Allison Brie, the main one, they got a sense of it when they did it. It's intoxicating. And they nailed the sisterhood of those wrestlers. They did a tremendous job nailing it. And I think that's why the wrestling audience, in part, has expanded and grown, because they did such a terrific job. My own sister is not a fan of professional wrestling, but she watched that series and has become one, because she was able to watch it in a setting whereby she was able to see what these women do to step into that squared circle.
Well, for the people who maybe enjoyed the series and maybe wanted to go back and see what the actual Glow was all about, do you think we could see maybe, Netflix or Access TV or someone having those original episodes available sometime?
I don't think it'll ever happen, because I sold my part in Glow after the second year, and I don't think the original videotapes were ever properly preserved. And I know for a fact they're not all in one place, and they were never properly stored, etc. There was a bit of turmoil at one point when Glow ended. And so it's something where you've got to catch it either on YouTube or glimpses of it. But in terms of an entire series of seeing Glow from the beginning to where it ended, I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah, that's too bad. My hope was always to maybe get access to the music, some of the raps. Maybe we could see an album or something on iTunes released.
Oh, those were fun to do.
Well, again, I think it's important to mention, the original Glow was, a bit tongue-in-cheek and more comedic, but, the women of wrestling here on Access TV, as you mentioned, the real deal, these women are leaving it all in the ring for sure.
They certainly are, and you wouldn't have a Tessa Blanchard stepping into the ring of WOW without that. The trainer of the WOW wrestlers is Selena Majors. Many in the South would know her as Bambi. And she and Tessa next year, due to the popularity of women's wrestling and what we've seen taking off, are going to be having a first all-women's training school for professional wrestling in Long Beach, California. So women from across the country can come out and learn the skills and see if they've got what it takes to step into the ring. And who knows, we may be able to find, the next Tessa Blanchard that way.
Awesome. Well, David, I know besides women in wrestling, you've done a lot of other stuff over the years. Is there anything else maybe in the works or something else we should look out for?
Oh, you mean me individually? No, my both feet and both hands are cemented in WOW Women of Wrestling, and it's full time. We've got to make sure that this succeeds. We've got to make sure we deliver the right programming that the fans are demanding, and that's what I'm up to for the next long term. We're going to be launching with eight programs on Access TV. And then our goal for this year, coming year, is to deliver upwards to a total of 26 by next December. And so just as methodically and slowly as we started this launch to bring women's wrestling back, we are doing the same thing with Access to make it a long-term successful venture. Access, as you well know and your fans do and listeners, brought New Japan Wrestling here to America. And they did a fabulous job of slowly and methodically introducing it to the marketplace to eventually whereby they were able to come here and do live events. And I mean, they sold out the first two in Long Beach, California, in just record-setting time. And that was due to the patience and the understanding of the marketplace by Access TV. They're very smart. Their president, Andrew Simon, is the wizard of fights. He knows MMA fighting. He started many of the stars of MMA, and he knows the fight game, and he knows how to present it and build it properly. So WOW's being introduced slowly, and it will grow and be big, and we hope by next October, in very few select markets, it will come to cities live.
Awesome. Again, David, I'm looking forward to the new show, and hopefully WOW Women of Wrestling can make its way through Minnesota one of these days.
Oh, it'd be a thrill for me, because Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, those are the meccas of professional wrestling, as far as I'm concerned, along with obviously New York.
Excellent. Well, if something comes up, I'll be hoping to speak with you again then.
Oh, I love it. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Dustin. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.